Welcome. We often hear that having a good heart is what matters most. But in Islam, there's this incredible principle that acts like a universal scale, not just for our intentions, but for every single action we perform. It's a concept that really defines the whole architecture of what makes a deed acceptable to God. So let's dive into this scale of following.
All right, let's jump right in with the big question. If your intention is pure, if you sincerely want to do something good, is that enough? Most of us know that famous Hadith, actions are but by intentions. And while that is 100% true, it's really only one side of a very important coin. You see, sincerity is the internal condition, but there's another equally critical external condition that absolutely has to be met for any of our deeds to be valid.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start with the foundational prophetic saying itself. Then, we'll look at how it works as a scale for our actions. After that, we'll unpack 5 really profound benefits that come from it, everything from understanding the perfection of the religion to how it acts as a guide for our daily lives. And then, we'll tie it all together with a quick summary.
Okay, let's get right to the source. This whole principle we're talking about, it rests on a short but incredibly powerful statement from the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And believe me, this thing is a true cornerstone for our entire practice of the faith.
This is the main version of the Hadith, which comes to us from Aisha, the mother of the believers. And it's recorded by both Imam al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim, which, as you know, means its authenticity is at the highest possible level. The wording here is so precise. Whoever innovates in this matter of ours, and that means the religion of Islam, what is not from it, then it is rejected. The outcome couldn't be clearer.
Now check this out. There's a second version, recorded by Imam Muslim, and the difference in wording is subtle, but it's huge. This one says, whoever does an action which is not upon our affair. So why is this so important? Well, scholars explain that this wording is actually even more comprehensive. The first version really zeroes in on someone inventing something totally new. This version covers that for sure, but it also covers doing a legitimate, prescribed action, but just doing it the wrong way. So it expands the whole principle from just invention to include incorrect application as well.
So you see, this hadith isn't just a statement to be memorized. It's a tool. It's something we use. In fact, scholars describe it as one of 2 essential scales that we use to weight every single one of our deeds. One scale measures our inner world, and this one measures our outer world.
And this right here gives us the full picture. It's like a 2-point inspection. On one scale, you've got the famous Hadith of intentions from Umar. Actions are but by intentions. This is the scale for our internal state, the why behind what we're doing. Is it for God alone? But then on the other scale, we have this Hadith of actions from Aisha. This is the scale for our external actions, the how we do things, and both have to pass inspection. A sincere action that's done incorrectly is rejected, and a correct action done with a bad intention, that's rejected too. Both conditions must be met.
All right, so with this idea of the 2 scales firmly in mind, let's start unpacking the first major benefit we get from this hadith. And this isn't just some small detail. It tells us something profound about the very nature of our religion.
So the first huge implication is this. The hadith establishes, without a doubt, that the Sharia, the divine path of Islam, is already complete. It's perfect. Think about it like a finished piece of software. It doesn't need any more updates, no user-generated plugins, no patches. Everything we could possibly need for our guidance and salvation has already been revealed.
And this leads us to a really powerful direct conclusion. If the religion is already complete, then any attempt to add a new act of worship, no matter how noble the intention behind it might seem, is fundamentally flawed. It's like trying to add your own brushstroke to a finished masterpiece. It doesn't improve it, it actually detracts from it. And the Hadith uses that definitive word, rejected. It's not just frowned upon, it's returned to the person who did it. It's considered null and void.
So this idea of rejecting any new additions flows naturally into our next 2 benefits. These focus specifically on this concept of religious innovation, what it is, how this hadith gives us the principle to reject it, and what kind of mindset that should create inside every single one of us.
Okay, let's define our key term, bid'ah. In an Islamic context, this refers specifically to a religious innovation. This is not about worldly things like cars or smartphones. It's about inventing a new way to worship God, introducing a belief or practice into the religion that has 0 authentic basis in the Quran or in the way of the Prophet.
And here we have the second major benefit. This hadith is basically the ultimate litmus test. That phrase, what is not from it, becomes the #1 criterion that scholars use to protect the integrity of the faith.
Any new act of worship that someone proposes gets measured against this standard. Does it have a basis in our affair, the established path of the Prophet? If the answer is no, then it's identified as bid'ah and it has to be rejected.
You know, this principle really forces us to think about our role, and that brings us to the third benefit, understanding that we have a choice. Are we a follower, a muttabi, or are we an innovator, a mubtadi? This hadith teaches us that our job isn't to try and invent new creative paths to God. Our job is to humbly and faithfully walk the straight path that He has already laid out for us. It's all about trusting in that divine guidance.
Now, this is a really critical clarification. Islam absolutely values logic and our intellect, but, and this is a big but, when it comes to the specific acts of worship, the how, the when, the what of our prayer, our fasting, and so on, the final authority isn't our personal reasoning. It's not our feelings or what just seems like a good idea. The final authority is the evidence. Is there a command for this? Is there a precedent in our affair, in the practice of the Prophet and his companions? That is the bottom line. Okay. On to our final two benefits. And this is where we see just how far-reaching this principle really is. It goes way beyond just ritual worship and extends into all of life. And we'll also see how this hadith implies a prerequisite, something it's basically commanding us to do.
Think about the wording the Prophet used. He said, "in this matter of ours." Scholars explain that this refers to the entire religion. This means the principle of following the established guidance isn't just for prayer and Hajj. No, it extends to every area the Sharia covers, our business contracts, our family relationships, our code of ethics. In every part of our life, our actions have to line up with this divine guidance.
And this brings us to a conclusion that you just can't avoid. I mean, think about it. How can you possibly follow our affair if you don't even know what our affair is? You can't. So this hadith contains a really powerful unspoken command. To apply this principle correctly, we have an obligation to seek the knowledge we need to tell the difference between the authentic path and all the other paths that diverge from it.
And this really gets to the root of the problem. Why do these religious innovations pop up and spread in the first place? Well, the number one cause is a lack of knowledge. When people are ignorant of the authentic texts and the evidence, it creates a vacuum. And that vacuum gets filled with local customs, cultural habits, or well-intentioned but completely baseless inventions. So knowledge is the antidote. It's the light that protects us from accidentally wandering off the path. Whew! We have covered a lot of ground from one short hadith and unpacked 5 absolutely essential benefits. So let's bring it all home now with a final summary of the key takeaways.
So here it is all laid out. First, this hadith teaches us that the Sharia is perfect and complete. It doesn't need any add-ons. Second, it's our main tool for spotting and rejecting religious innovations. Third, it helps us develop that crucial mindset of being a follower, not an innovator. Fourth, we learned its authority is massive, covering all aspects of our lives. And finally, number 5, it makes seeking religious knowledge an absolute must for anyone who wants to practice their faith correctly.
And that brings us to the end. We've gone through the principle, but the real test is putting it into practice. So we'll leave you with this to think about. How can we start consciously using this hadith, this scale, for our outward actions as a filter in our daily lives to make sure that everything we do is not only sincere on the inside, but also correct on the outside? Thank you for joining us.